Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Lust and greed, Kam, Lobha, are prominent in the modern world. The modern rush to the cities is fueled by Kam and Lobha, lust and greed. People think, why should we live in the villages? We can earn more in the city. With more money we can purchase more things and enjoy life better. So the whole society becomes centered around earning money, and these two, lust and greed, they go side by side, hand in hand, so that people who have more than they need, still they have more money, more goods than they need, still they want more and more and more. And with lust and greed go the other contaminations, prominent among which are, the six famous ones are Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy. So in a society where lust and greed, in modern society, lust and greed are promoted. There are so many advertisements. Buy this, buy that. Become a billionaire. Win the lottery. Become rich quick without any work. Have a big car to show what a big person you are. So in this way, lust and greed are promoted. Where there is lust and greed, there must be also anger, illusion, madness, and envy. And therefore it's not surprising that there are wars going on all the time all over the world. And recent years have seen the emergence of terrorism, in which no one at any time in any place can feel very safe. You can just be walking down the street in the city and all of a sudden there's a huge explosion and your arms and legs get blown off. In fact, terrorism is targeted and at situations where people least expect it. So we cannot expect peace or happiness in a society where lust and greed are promoted. It's said that man is a rational animal. But practically speaking, we see he acts in a very irrational way. Just like you can see here, living in the village, you can live very peacefully. And by the grace of Mother Nature, Father Krishna, everything required for human existence is supplied. You need this light? For writing, maybe. Okay. There's no need to run to the cities and work very hard and be full of anxiety. But people think, I need more and more. It's not enough to live in a simple hut. There's nothing to do in the village. In the city I can go to the cinemas and bars and clubs. This is not very intelligent. To swap a peaceful life for a life full of anxiety. Village life is also much more healthy physically than the city life. The man who is supposed to be a rational animal seems to be more irrational than the animals. More of an animal than the animals. So why this irrationality when humans have more intelligence? Because when the intelligence becomes influenced by lust and greed, then it becomes lost. dhyato vishayam punsangs sangateshu vijayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate. By meditation upon the object, by contemplating the objects of the senses, attachment for them arises. From attachment arises desire, and from desire anger. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. From anger comes bewilderment. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. And from this bewilderment, one's memory is lost, a memory of what we're supposed to be doing in the human form of life. Smriti bhrangshat buddhinasho. When the memory is lost, then the intelligence is spoiled. And buddhinashat pranashyati. And when the intelligence is spoiled, then everything is spoiled. So, the question, if man is a rational animal, why does he act? If he has more intelligence and can discriminate, why does he act irrationally? It's because he's influenced by lust and greed, which impels him to use his intelligence for unintelligent purposes. Instead of thinking what is the goal of life and how to attain it, he blindly accepts that life is meant for satisfying the senses. Kamasya indriya priti. We find in Bhagavatam the statement, Kamasya nindriya priti. One's desire should not be directed towards sensual enjoyment. The bewildered persons think just the opposite. So the whole society is driven by lust and greed. But it need not be like that. It has not always been like that in human society. And still, in human society, not everyone is primarily driven by lust and greed. Persons raised in an atmosphere of lust and greed presume that everyone is driven by lust and greed. That means people raised in modern city life, they presume that lust and greed, that's what life is all about. But, for instance, in the old USSR, greed was not a very prominent motive, as far as I can understand, in the life of most people. There was not much greed to acquire more and more material objects, because there were no material objects to acquire anyway. And, Jayaved is nodding his head. He's an old man. He lived most of his life in the communist regime. We found in many cases people had plenty of money, but there was nothing to buy. So, and there wasn't even, like in the Western world, they're always bringing out more and more new gadgets for people to purchase, more and more electronic items and all kinds of things. But in Soviet society, most people never even heard of these things. They might have a gramophone, and then they could have some records of some classical music and some Soviet patriotic music and some folk music, and that's it. And you can see the difference between Moscow then and Moscow now. The whole atmosphere has become much more intense and nasty. Of course, I came to Moscow in the Soviet times, and there was an overall atmosphere of oppressiveness and fear. That was there. Which is, at least that was my impression. Which is less so now. But the striving for money and that's it's a money-oriented atmosphere now, which it wasn't previously. So, I was saying it's not that people are necessarily driven by greed. You'll find in the simple villages, people, they often just, they help each other with various things. They don't charge money for it. Whereas in the city, you can't get anyone to come and, change a fuse for you without paying him $100 or something. course, you can't change a fuse for yourself. You should pay $100 for things that's stupid. That's an example. A godbrother of mine, some years ago, he was building a house in a village in India. And he was frustrated at the workers who are local village people, because he had the American idea that, well, do things quickly. Whereas the villagers, they'd come in the morning whenever they felt like it and go in the evening whenever they felt like it. And if there was a holiday, they'd just take a few days off, some religious festival or something. If there was a death or a birth in the village, they would take 3 days off without prior notice. I mean, you don't get prior notice of death usually. So he thought to solve the problem the American way. And he told his contractor, look, I'm just going to pay them more, and then, they'll work better. And the contractor said, no, don't do that. That's the worst thing you can do. So anyway, he ignored the contractor's advice. And through an interpreter, he told the villagers, look, I want you to work harder and finish this house. Actually, it wasn't just one house, it was a whole complex. I want you to finish this all quickly, and I'm paying you double wages. The next day, no one came to work. And the devotee asked the contractor, why did no one come to work? I paid them extra. They didn't come to work. I thought they'd come early. He said, I told you. They figured out they have enough money to live for 2 days, so why should they work? So when they need more money, they'll come. They only work when they need money. They don't work because they don't work because they think I'll get more and more and become rich. Similarly, Akinchan Krishna Prabhu, you know him very well, in South India, also in South India. He told me recently that on the Tamil Nadu Kerala border area where his birthplace is, recently the Tamil Nadu state government had enticed some jungle-dwelling tribals to give up their primitive life and come and live on the land in the village. They thought, this isn't good, people are living in the jungle. Of course, their ancestors have been living in the jungle for as long as anyone could imagine. But the government thought, we have to educate everyone and make them civilized. We want to have 100% literacy in our state. Everyone should have electricity and running water and TVs and all the benefits of modern civilization. It's the war against poverty, which is actually the war against simplicity. That people should live complicated lives, and they want them, in the name of progress, they want them to live very complex lives, so they have, before they didn't have to pay, now they have to pay for water, which they got free before. They have to pay for electricity, which they didn't need before. They have to pay for some payment to live in their house, which they didn't have to do before, because they just had some huts in the forest. Then they're supposed to send their children to the school, and they need uniforms. In Tamil Nadu, the government gives free TVs to everyone. And they fill them with all propaganda, you need this, you need that. And so, So whereas previously people were content with whatever they had, now they're discontent with whatever they have. So they have to work in factories to get more money, and then they're so frustrated working all day in the factory that they drink, the money they get, they booze at night. Not vodka, it's village, brandy they call it.
Right. You said that those who are working in factory.
Yeah, but not vodka.
I meant some alcohol.
Some alcohol. In English, vodka means a specific type of alcohol, not any type of alcohol.
But we associate vodka with any other
any
alcohol.
type of, yes, any type, yeah, okay. Then, then they get drunk and they beat their wives and their children, and it's miserable. So anyway, Akinchan Krishna didn't tell me all this. He just told that I'm just extrapolating all this. He just told me that they came out of the jungle on the government's behest.
He came.
No, not him. The tribal. But after 2 years, they all decided, hey, we were better off in the jungle, and they just left and went back to the jungle. They became uncivilized again. Probably a lot better off than when they were civilized. So often people who think themselves very sophisticated, they will make comments about persons like yourselves. This is crazy. Why are you leaving the city to go to the village? You see, in the city it's all very sophisticated. Everyone has a car. In the village, you don't need a car. You can everything you need you can walk for. And if it's so far, then you don't bother. Anything that's too far away, you just don't bother. In Moscow, you'll see people with cars that cost $30,000-$40,000. They can go 200 kilometers an hour, but they're just stuck in the traffic jam. They're going less than 2 kilometers an hour. So be convinced that you've made the right decision to live in the village. Definitely the mind becomes much more peaceful in this atmosphere. And lust and greed, which are the enemies, Krishna says, the 3 gates to hell are lust, greed and anger. They automatically become reduced. Of course, there's no use just to live in the village. It's not that one automatically becomes spiritually advanced just by living in the village. As you can see, most of the people living in the village in Russia are not very spiritually advanced. What do you call them? Vodka chicks or something? Vodka-ites. There are many alcoholics here. The most alcoholic people in the world, I learned yesterday, are the Russians. Russia's number 1 in the world in something. In average alcohol consumption per head. So patriotic Russians might complain about the Hare Krishna movement. That if too many people become Hare Krishnas or Krishnaites, then we'll lose our position as number 1 drunkards. So every patriotic Russian should drink. What's the average per year?
Unimaginable.
15 liters, 20 liters of vodka a year?
I think even more than that.
Average?
Yeah.
If you include every man, woman and child, there's more than 20 liters of vodka a year. Well, that's a lot. I don't know. You don't know either.
Pure spirit is 20 liters.
20 liters per year of pure spirit per person, including every man, woman and child in the country.
That means 40 liters vodka.
Yeah, about 40 liters of vodka, and that's very strong vodka.
Yes.
And that doesn't include like the children.
It includes all the population.
All the population, but if you consider that the children they don't drink, then the average person is actually drinking 6. That's more than a liter a week. That's a lot. And they probably drink it mostly all on 1 or 2 days, right?
No,
in the village they just go on.
Yes.
But in the city, it's mostly at the weekend.
Yeah, or in the evening.
In the evenings. So, chant Hare Krishna. That is the purpose of being here. The actual purpose of being here is not actually just to live in the country. But the idea is to live in the association of devotees in a peaceful, simple way, so to maximize our hearing and chanting of Krishna. Of course, in the preliminary stages, there may be a lot of work, building houses and so on. But just like in India, during the monsoon season, people can't do much because of the conditions, and that time is favorable for staying in one place and doing a lot of hearing and chanting. So similarly, you have here the winter, during which you can have longer sessions daily of hearing and chanting about Krishna. Now, don't be influenced by lust and greed. That's important. One problem that our farm communities have had around the world is that, influenced by this city mentality of always doing more, devotees have tried to do more or taken more land than they can easily manage. They take a big plot of land and then they think, well, we'll plant so many crops and within 5 years we'll pay off the loan for the land. And they take a loan and they get a combine harvester. And they instead of living simply, they just get in the same business mentality. And they have to work hard. And they have no time for hearing and chanting about Krishna. So what was the purpose of them coming to the land in the first place? So, although in the beginning some extra work will be required, devotees have to be careful not to be so ambitious as to take on more and more work and forget the real purpose for which they came here. Yesterday we were discussing about preaching on the farm. Well, preaching should always be there in the life of a devotee. But really the best preaching will be if you can live simply and happily and spiritually and show people a better way of life. Unless and until these communities are established, much of what Srila Prabhupada writes about in his books remains simply theoretical. So congratulations to all of you on coming here. Keep your spiritual life strong. Associate together closely. Be sure to not fail to chant Hare Krishna at least 16 rounds every day. Rise early. Don't be like karmis who are simply sleeping all morning. Follow there must be absolute scrupulousness in following all the regulated principles. Alright, any question please? I also could come here if I could do some concentrated writing. I don't get much opportunity, but it seems I might not get that opportunity here also.
You will get me.
Because wherever I go, people tell me, yes, you come and we'll leave you alone. But then they don't. And it's the same everywhere. So I'm so unfortunate I have to go away from devotees in order to do this service of writing. Because no one lets me write, morning till night. Any question? Where's the great flycatcher? Yamuna.
Лучший ловитель мух.
The more flies have come. You have to... Yeah.
How many hours we can spend for working, for building our house, for working on the land in the day that will not harm our spiritual practice?
Yeah, more or less the question is how to keep balance in time between working and spiritual activities. Well, I can't say exactly, but you have to use some intelligence in this regard also. I mean, just like building a house, it's essential to get it finished before the cold season begins. So you may have to do some marathon working on it. But that shouldn't be that shouldn't become like the standard forever. Jayadvaita's house is built. Now he has the inside work to do, which is also a lot of work. But now that the basic structure is there, it's not such an emergency to get the rest of it done. So you can go on with your spiritual practices as usual without cutting them down.
Out of the subject, can I have a question?
Any more on the subject questions first? No? Okay. Then
Are there in the Vedic scriptures any rituals which allow one to perform them and to take birth in the same dynasty?
Not that I know of. Although Prabhupada says that sometimes someone who's very attached to their family members, they can take birth again in that same family. Why should you want to take birth again? Chant Hare Krishna and go to the spiritual world. Don't come back.
It says that I just want to understand motivation of those who are following such rituals.
Well, there's no need to understand. Try to understand the motivation of persons, of pure devotees. In a general way, we can understand the motivation of non-devotees. It's illusion. It's fueled by lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion and madness. This much we understand from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no need to go into a deep psychological study of the mentality of foolish people.
More one question.
But one thing, questions, they should be aimed at understanding the ultimate reality.
As we see from the life, devotees and non-devotees, they have some type of fear. And when it is concerned of a devotee, how he should be afraid of falling down, that it will not paralyze his consciousness, his activities.
Definitely devotee should be afraid of falling down. If we're not afraid of falling down, then we're likely to fall down. Just like when you're driving, if you're not afraid that there could be an accident, then you'll be lax and you're more likely to have an accident. So we should be afraid of Maya. And we should be always taking shelter of Krishna to be free from the effect of Maya. That kind of fear is healthy. That also, we shouldn't be wholly motivated by fear. Just like if you're driving, we should be conscientious and aware of the danger, but at the same time, if we're too fearful, then we can't drive at all. Or we'll just go along at, 5 kilometers an hour. Progress will be very slow. Okay, we'll distribute some prasad. Now, one thing, here in the village, as far as possible, actually in the town also, try to minimize the use of this plastic. It's simply a pollutant. It's very bad for the soil. And to make it also pollutes the earth. So, better not to use it.
Mataji's first?
Yeah, let them come. Oh, yeah.
He has question.
All right, another question.
What the young people should do? As myself, I have completed the school, so what should be my position here in the
That's
village?
another problem, school.
When they have completed
School, I'm saying school is another problem. They educate you to think that you have to live in the city. use your full potential. But the result of that is that you end up forgetting Krishna. So there are so many things to do. Actually, here in the village there should also be developed all kinds of handicrafts.
Handicrafts?
Means pottery, weaving, tapestry, all these different things. Carpentry. Nowadays you see they make the chairs just functional. But previously, anything a carpenter made, he would make it very nicely designed, very aesthetic.
Like
look at this, it's just completely rectangular, no artistry. No artistry whatsoever, just functional, that's all. One interesting thing, even now in Bangladesh, in the cities, there are many bicycle rickshaws. And still they have hand painted on every rickshaw, on the back some painting of something or other. Usually something stupid like someone smoking a cigar or maybe anything. But the idea is there should be some decoration there. So you could study Shastra deeply and become a teacher. Or a farmer. There's so many things. You could take direction from an astrologer as to what the future course of your life would be, and then follow that. That's the duty of the elders in the village, to engage the young people. Otherwise they'll all want to run off to the city. And then there's no community means it should be developed. It should be renewed generation after generation. Just like until recently it was common all over the world that people would be living in the same house that someone had constructed, their forefathers, 15 generations ago had constructed. There's no reason to and no thought of moving here, moving there. Not necessary. The same house you grow up in as a child, you live your life in, and you pass away there. Everything's simple. Hare Krishna. No, many questions. Yeah, okay, if the army calls you,
yes,
tell them you're a Hare Krishna.
In some cases they may consider, this is fanatic, better to not take it, because there are different cases.
You can go into the interview like this.
Сейчас идите. Все вопросы решатся.
They might take you anyway. If you go in with tilak and shikha, they may take you anyway. It seems to me the army training, it's not such a bad idea, considering that most young men today are just so stupid and irresponsible, actually. At least, well, they can have for all of them if they're feeling so hot, but actually you can learn to tolerate it. Otherwise, when it gets hot, you'll want to go to the city because you can have electricity and a fan, and the better you learn to tolerate. So maybe the army instills some spirit of discipline and duty, responsibility. Of course, you also might learn how to take drugs and swear, use vulgar language and all these kind of things. What else? Shivananda saying something?
Smoking, cigarettes.
Yeah. And you never know, they may go to war again, so you might get drafted down to Afghanistan or Chechnya or some Dagestan. Now they're fighting in Dagestan. You can go to your interview dressed as a devotee, tell them I'm Hare Krishna. If you want, you take me, but I have my diet, I have my lifestyle, I'm going to follow that. Yeah, there are many questions coming now. Yeah.
Our life in the village is supposed to be simple, as you said, but our climate is so severe here, especially in the winter.
That's true.
And some devotees who come here, they see we have to make so many arrangements just to keep some standards of worship or our devotional service, that they feel they have lesser time for hearing and chanting what they have previously, before coming here. What do you think about this?
Is that a fact? In the winter you don't get time?
No, we get time.
So? It's true, you have to go and chop the wood. You have to chop the wood and put it in the fire, that's true.
Factually, we have time little more than in the summer, but that the verily atmosphere of this winter season affects us with tamaguna influence. It's so cold, and it's actually usually it's cloudy here and no sun, and
then you have to do lots of kirtan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that his name would be preached in every town and village in the world. So it's great mercy on you that you have the opportunity to do so in this most inclement area. Every month we see in the World Sankirtan newsletter, India is way ahead of other countries. Which is not surprising in one sense, because the culture of India is much closer to Krishna consciousness than any other country. And generally Russia is always number 2. Which, Russia is a big country, but it's also an achievement of the Russian devotees that they stay committed to book distribution and preaching. Because to go out on book distribution, especially in the winter here, is not easy. And people don't have a natural pious inclination to take books as they do in India. Of course, it's not that it's just completely easy in India, as those of you have experienced that. You're the only one who knows. It's not so easy but on the whole, it's much more difficult in Russia. So that's a great mercy on you to have the opportunity to establish the Sankirtan movement in these difficult places. So don't be beaten by Maya. Pick up your kartals and chant Hare Krishna. Yeah, now there are so many questions. Maybe we should leave this till tomorrow, or what? Maybe we take 1 or 2 more. Are you a good mouse? Live here?
I just came here to see how the devotees live here, and maybe I will get inspired. Задавайте вопросы. В соседних деревнях. He was asking, can we conduct padayatras from this village in surrounding villages?
Sounds like a very good idea. It's a good idea, but I would say the first priority is to get the infrastructure of the village to a minimum level first.
To have infrastructure.
To get the basic infrastructure of the village together is the first priority. Mm-hmm. Then the programs like Padayatra would be very, very good, very welcome addition. And maybe during December, those who can be spared from the community, they could go to neighboring towns and do book distribution during the marathon at least. Yeah.
Мы выделяем?
There's a big problem in Russia among the devotees about school. They want to send their children.
No. He is speaking about some financial question.
Yeah.
I'm not getting full question now.
The problem is the temples are asking money for making Moscow temple, Kazan temple, and
it's related to that. He's saying that as usually in Russia, devotees are not very strong financially, and
everywhere actually.
Everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
And now, if we will get some donations, means if we will be giving some donations and we will have some amount of money here as donation. So, what is better? To use those money to build up our infrastructure, to build up our community, or to send those donations for developing other projects like in Kazan or Moscow or somewhere else?
Well, different people will tell you different things. This project is also important. Temples are good for preaching, but only a few people can live in them. Even most people who join the temple as a brahmachari, they don't stay their whole life there. So what we're preaching to people is to be practically enacted among the majority of people in these communities. Otherwise we see in the cities, devotees many times are not doing very good. Just by you're talking about the tamagun in the village, what about the tamagun in the city? At least you have all devotees living together here. But in the cities, the devotees are living all scattered, they're living among karmis. Most of them are rising late. Many of them, even though they're initiated, they don't chant 16 rounds. They're watching TV. So I would say in some ways these village projects, they're more important even than the city projects. This is the practical manifestation of everything that the city project is supposed to be preaching about.
Понимаете, да?
And the city projects, they're like big cars. They take a lot of petrol. They always need more and more fuel. They always need lots of money. Always need lots and lots of money. Whereas the idea with a project like this is that after a certain stage, you don't need money. You neither generate it nor spend it. You neither generate money nor do you spend it. You grow your own food. You use firewood from the forest for cooking and heating. Everything is supplied from the land. I gave a great idea to Goswami Maharaj a few years ago. How to build a Moscow temple. He said, put a 10% markup on all the BBT books, and for the Moscow temple, and then go all over Russia and inspire the devotees to distribute lots of books. And you can put an advertisement in all the books that we are inviting God to Moscow, and you can donate to make a temple for Krishna in Moscow. And devotees will become very inspired to distribute more and more books to build this temple. And even many people, by reading that, they may become inspired to donate. And practically we see wherever the book distribution is pushed, everything else follows. The devotees become so spiritually enlivened with the mercy they get from Srila Prabhupada that all kinds of wonderful things just seem to happen automatically. So I don't think you're going to get very far by trying to squeeze out a few rubles out of our poor Russian devotees. Anyway, that's my idea. Yeah. That was Prabhupada's idea also, actually. He built these temples in Mayapur, Vrindavan and Bombay with book distribution money. So you can also suggest it to him when you see him. In Tirupati, Yes.
Can we go to this city to get educated in occupation which we can use in the village life?
Such as?
Painter.
Painting, yeah. How much is painting needed in the village at this stage? What's the idea? To do fine
Painter
art?
Means not the building, but the person, art.
Yeah.
It's like a handcraft, as you said.
Yeah. But the idea is that you paint pictures and then you sell them, is it?
To paint the village, the houses, and like that. Some pots, to decorate some
It might
pots.
be necessary to do that kind of, to get training in the town, because the village culture that used to pass it on, that's lost now. Before, this would be in the village, the culture, but now that's lost, so you might have to go to the town to learn.
Yeah, I understood, but from other sense, if youth will go there, so they will get
They won't come back, yeah.
tendency to remain there, and they will get this bad association there, also for all these years, because it's supposed that they will not go there for a short period, they will go for a few years.
Okay, you can give your idea also. It's also valid.
Ну,
Now I'm going to say something which might embarrass you, but it's a fact, so please don't mind. But in traditional life, the main occupation of women was having children and looking after them. The woman's body is designed by God and nature to have children. And it's only in the modern age with contraception and abortion widely available and that women only have 1 or 2 children. Otherwise, normally they'd have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. So, actually children are very important in village life also. They make everyone happy. Because children are not... Well, in traditional life, children are not considered a burden, as in the modern demoniac age. People like to see, they like to look after them, and they don't consider them a nuisance. And in a labor-intensive agricultural community, the more children, the more helpers. So, women usually, they have a busy life. There are many things to do. Looking after children. But it wasn't such a burden in traditional life because there'd been many mothers and all the mothers and the children would all do everything together. So we actually need lots of young couples to come and then they can have lots of children like that. And in the village, the children, they see all the women as their mothers actually. They'll run in, then playing, they'll run in and out of each other's houses like that. They don't differentiate so much. This is our house, that's someone else's house. Have you seen that in your childhood?
This so.
Yeah.
This means yes.
Yeah. So, that you may consider also. This oil-based culture cannot last very long. When the oil is... Eventually this Tatar oil, there won't be any left. And all over the world, gradually, it's going to be finished. And then we won't have to discuss all these things. Automatically, society will have to go back to the pre-advanced days. They'll go back to being primitive again. And they'll stop all these advanced things like abortion and mass animal slaughter. So actually that's what I'm saying. This establishing these communities is preaching. Because those times are coming. And all over the world food shortages are coming. For various reasons, there's not enough food being produced. Here in Russia this year, 70% of the crops are spoiled due to drought. So the farmers are going to become very important people. And they're going to at least be able to eat, which in the city, what are they going to do? You have a house, you have an apartment on the 50th floor, first class car, no food. So what are you going to do? The city relies on a constant supply of food. If food is not brought in daily, then within 2, 3, 4 days there'll be major problems in the cities. So the farmer's going to be in a better situation. Here you have 2 rivers, so even in this drought you have water close by. It's a very good location actually. The soil is excellent, as in much of Russia actually. But especially this black soil is really excellent. Okay, I'm going to finish now. Hare Krishna.
Закончим.
It looks like there are many questions, but we can leave them for some other time. Hare Krishna. So let's distribute prasad. Be a good cook. Learn how to cook. Very important. Even if, you see, if it's dark and cold, people might be feeling a little miserable, but first class prasadam will help to keep everyone happy. So you can learn how to cook cabbage in 200 different ways. There are many other things women can do.
На самом деле, женщины могут делать много разных вещей.
Weaving, sewing, knitting, telling stories to the children, singing. I think Sudevi is an expert in Tatarsky dancing, is it? I don't know if we won't have too much of that. She knows a little bit.
She humbly does not tell us. Does not.
Then keeping bees. There are so many things. Many things to do. Many things can be learned. If you can learn it in the village, it's better. Because city life is like an intoxication. It feels so good. But by